I'd love to get out of California, And like I said, if people can suggest to the Jews that they move, the Holy Land to Arizona, I think we can move production, a little bit further away from the Chateau Marmont without an offense to history.
Hi, I'm Tim Cavanaugh for Reason TV. We're here with Joe Gressis, the co-founder of Secret Handshake Productions and a film and television producer. Joe, welcome.
Thanks
for joining us.
Thank you very much, Tim.
Joe is you're one of a dwindling species. You're a producer who's actually active in LA, and you're a small business person who is active in LA. In which way does the state of California make your life more miserable?
Wow, as a small businessman or as a producer?
Yeah.
Kind of. Wow, there's a myriad number of ways in which I can be made miserable. I've discovered new ones every day. The things that make producing miserable seem to have more to do with the industry itself, with unions, with a lot of personalities involved. Not so much like with the laws. Obviously, the laws affect me much more as a small businessman.
What's the story? Why are people leaving California when Hollywood is still the center of movie making in America?
Really, my question isn't, why do we have runaway production? My question is, why aren't we following it? The fact that we remain here is kind of ridiculous. It's like the whole industry is a reverse convention. It's like we all stay here most of the time, and then when it's time to work, that's when we go somewhere distant for a little while and then come back. It really should kind of go the other way. There's any number of reasons why people would want to leave California. It's difficult to shoot here. It's much more expensive. Everyone is savvy to film, including local government kind of concerns. So permits become more expensive. Everything becomes more expensive. And of course, taxes are very high here. It's difficult to, in LA, we're paying something like 10% sales tax, for example, like almost at that point now. So all of this becomes, very expensive. People are leaving because other states are offering like great incentives. We shot a movie over the summer in Michigan because they were offering a 42% tax incentive, and so we'd be silly not to follow this. Not to follow this kind of benefit.
Should California then be doubling down on its, as some people have said, in addition to the tax credit they're offering now, which applies to productions under $75 million? There's now an argument out there to start subsidizing even much larger productions so that you get to $200 million movies being made with taxpayer support.
California's in trouble enough, I think, without actually paying for a lot of movies on top of it. I mean, movies seem to get made here, or were at one point, without a tax incentive. But it's just now that, everyone is realizing that behavior follows incentives. There's certainly, ways to do that. For some reason, they don't, the politics of Hollywood tend to not be such that they put much weight behind economic, theories that aren't of the Keynesian variety. But here it is. Everybody responds to these incentives, regardless of whether or not the fact that they believe them in an abstract way. When we were in Michigan, huge movies were there. Transformers 3 had started up. Just as we were leaving. Real Steel was shooting there, which was like a $50-some million movie, maybe more than that. Machine Gun Preacher with Gerard Butler, which is also in the $30-40 million range, something like that. There were a lot of like high-budget movies that had fled. And there's a lot of inconveniences to leave LA in terms of like talent pool and such, but people do it.
We worked together on this movie this summer in Michigan. And
full disclosure.
Yes, and when you flee California, you are not necessarily fleeing your headaches. There are a lot of work rules in Michigan that are actually even more restrictive. This was a kids' movie that we were working on, and in Michigan, I believe you can correct me on this, but the child labor regs are even more severe than they are in California.
They are. They're more difficult there, and so there's a certain number of hours that you're allowed to work kids, and that's it. And there's just all, you're working with a lot of different, unions with very strict rules. And, Michigan being the home of the UAW, it's like they certainly know how to enforce union rules. And so it's like, you're not fleeing those headaches by going from California to Michigan. You're definitely not.
When we're speaking about runaway production, other than the incentives that other states offer or other countries offer, are there other reasons why you want to shoot somewhere else?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'd love to get out of California, And like I said, if people can suggest to the Jews that they move, the Holy Land to Arizona, I think we can move production, a little bit further away from the Chateau Marmont without an offense to history. I think that's acceptable. I mean, what interests me is something that is friendly to business. So I don't even need incentives. If there was a way to really accomplish more of this, of what I need to do outside of California, in Texas or Delaware or something like that, a place that actually will be like, I don't know if Delaware's the right idea, but Texas, for example, where it's very friendly to business. Without even incentives, just that we know that it's like we can, we're not going to lose as much of what we have in taxes, where it's like, corporate tax is reasonable, where it's like, hiring more employees is, a benefit. There's states that do that.
What about the spectacular vistas that open in everywhere you look in California? I mean, you do have a lot of places to shoot.
I will say a reduced corporate tax can make the Delaware River look much more attractive. I can appreciate the ripples of oil on its surface.
How much of the difficulty of shooting here is unions and work rules?
I mean, that is difficult, but it is difficult everywhere because you can't really make a movie above a certain size without union involvement. It's just not possible.
And I mean, the incentives that you have when you're dealing with unionized crew is their incentive is actually to do everything, I don't want to say it the wrong way, but to do everything wrong on the production. It's better if you're going into overtime. Everybody, they call it the golden hour, not because the sun is right, but because that's when you start making your real cash. And all of that is, as everybody knows, your most expensive days are on the set. A delay of an hour could be $15,000 and so forth.
Or more.
Or a lot more, depending on I was thinking of a small production. So is there any way to get around that?
Well, the only way to really work non-union in the United States is to make it a very low-budget movie. I think somewhere under $750,000, maybe less, you could probably go non-union because there's just not enough really to interest them. The other thought is to leave the country, which I'd be more than happy to do. I have no great need to hire Americans. I'll go elsewhere. We've had an opportunity recently to shoot a movie in Hong Kong, and I certainly hope that comes to fruition because I'd be thrilled to get out here. And see how it works. We had a Hong Kong line producer put together a budget for us, and our below-the-line cost in Hong Kong was something like $600,000, where here it would be over $2 million.
Wow.
And it's like, and they've got, as you may have, seen, it's like Hong Kong's got has had, at least in the past, a pretty fine film industry. Hong Kong, Singapore, there's like a lot of good production that's coming out of those countries too, and they're able to do it for a much more reasonable rate. They're also not high, there is some subsidization that goes on, but it's not to the degree of, like the European film markets or something like that, which of course, and those subsidies are going away as well. So, everyone's kind of seeing that there isn't necessarily.
Why is film financing so screwed up? And this predates the incentives. It predates a lot of stuff. There's never been a time when people looked at the financing of the motion picture industry and said, hey, that's really a model, a straightforward.
This way, I think it's because on every level there's a miscommunication about what's going on in the film industry. I think that when it comes to the studios, they treat it too much like a business, and when it comes to indies, they don't treat it enough. The problem is that it's a product that if you make it as best it could possibly come out, you still have no idea whether it's going to respond to people or not. It's a problem with art, and it's a very, very expensive art. Wow. And when it comes to film financing, it's almost entirely ego-based as well. I think, a lot of people who, certainly at the studio level, it's like, there's a lot of ego that goes into it.
It's very hard. I don't think people really appreciate that making a movie is incredibly hard. It involves millions of people and a ton of money and a very high pressure kind of situation.
I want to kill myself and others every single day I'm on set. Well, the thing about a movie is that if done right, it's like a multi-million-dollar corporation that exists for a couple of weeks. And you've got 100 employees who've never met each other and are only around for 5 weeks. Motivation is difficult, especially if you're trying to fire someone, it takes 3 weeks. Well, not everyone. Sometimes you can fire people right away, but sometimes it takes a long time. And it's like they can wait those things out. I never got a greater appreciation of Michael Bay than after I had started producing a couple of movies, because I always thought he was like, his movies are all terrible. I still do, but I really appreciate what he brings to the table, which is that here's a guy who's got, a creative skills as well as the skills of like a CEO who holds together $200 million worth of product that lasts for just like a short period of time, manages to crack the whip and get everyone to do their job. I mean, that's not an easy feat. So, kudos to Michael Bay. I'm not going to see Transformers 3, but I understand why these guys have their place in the landscape.